So, I don't know why I haven't made this video sooner. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I thought it would make a pretty cool topic. Today I wanted to talk to y'all about some of the programming tools that I use in the world of computer engineering. Just the tools that I use to kind of help with my workflow and, do what I need to do. I thought it would make a pretty interesting video. These are just what I use, and they help with my workflow. This might not necessarily be what's best for you, but if you have suggestions on software or tools that might be better for me, please be sure to leave them down in the comments, because I'm always looking at trying new things and would love some ideas and some inspiration. So let's start with it. So my workflow is obviously programming, and to do that, I use a multitude of things. Starting off with the operating system. My go-to operating system is Linux Mint. However, that's a big asterisk because it's pretty much anything based off of Ubuntu. I've used Ubuntu, just vanilla Ubuntu, plenty of times as well. But my go-to operating system is Linux Mint. I like the terminal. I'm familiar with all of the commands. They're the commands that I learned while I was at school in the labs. That's what all of the computers ran. They didn't run Mint. They ran some Ubuntu-based distro. But that's the thing. That's the beauty of it, is that they're all based off the same thing, so you can switch from one to another pretty simply. I do use Windows sometimes. I don't program on Windows. I actually have not. One of the things I've been trying to research is a way to program on Windows efficiently, because I actually have to test a lot of software on Windows. But I have not found a very good, streamlined approach to compiling code on Windows. So what I end up doing for Windows is I use VirtualBox, and I fire up an Ubuntu VM, and I just program inside of that. And I use a shared folder for passing project files. But my go-to operating system is Linux. I like the customization. I'm a big customization freak. Of course, it's free and open source. I love open source software. It's just awesome. I find that open source typically has the best customization features. I like the option to go look at the code. I've actually learned quite a bit about programming just by examining open source code for some of the programs that I use, and that's been awesome. So yeah, love open source software. I try to avoid anything proprietary, just for anything I use, operating systems, programs, that kind of thing. I just love the open source. I love it's free. You don't have to worry about things like licenses. You don't have to worry about proprietary file formats, like some video editing software uses proprietary video file types. I like everything to be standardized. I like everything to be open. I like the freedom that comes from having open source software. Alright, so I've talked about the operating system. Now let's talk about my programming tools. So let's, start off with IDEs. This one will be pretty quick. I don't actually use an IDE. I used to use one called Eclipse. You've probably heard of it. Very popular, open source, of course. And Eclipse was great. I actually really liked Eclipse, and I would recommend it. The thing about Eclipse is that if you need a plugin for anything, I can pretty much guarantee you that Eclipse has it. It's very modular. It allows plugins for pretty much anything you could ever want, which is awesome. I just stopped using it because it didn't really suit my needs as much anymore. IDEs tend to cater themselves towards lots of big projects, and I just wasn't working on many. IDEs, they have a lot of cool features that are useful, nice to have, but they generally come with a lot of stuff packaged into them, like debuggers and garbage collecting and things like that, and that makes them kind of clunky. My go-to IDE is Eclipse. I used to use Visual Studio in high school. I didn't really like it. So if I had to recommend an IDE, I'd recommend Eclipse. So now for text editors. This is what I use. This is what I basically use all the time. This is what I use for writing code and reading code. So for text editors, I have two. The first one that I use is Vim. You're probably familiar with it. It's quite popular. Vim is great because it's baked into the terminal, so I really like it for writing code because I don't even need a mouse. All I need is a keyboard, and if you just memorize the commands, you can get really, really fast with Vim, and it's so efficient. If I'm ever writing code, Vim is what my go-to. I love how integrated it is. I love how seamless it is. The downside is you do need to be familiar with the command line, and you do need to not be scared of the terminal. So it can be daunting. I remember when I was brand new to coding, I found Vim. I was kind of freaked out by it. I used to not really like the terminal that much. I thought it was, I wanted my GUIs. I didn't think the terminal, I thought it was outdated. It was not the best way to do things, but oh boy was I wrong. So I'm glad that I finally made the switch. So Vim is probably the best for writing code for me. And then I use, the second one that I use is VS Code. VS Code is probably one of my favorite pieces of software ever. It's open source, even though it's a branch off of Visual Studio, the IDE from Microsoft. It's just a text editor, but it is open source, and it has so many plugins. I love the customization options for VS Code. It has different themes, different compilers that you can use. It has so much that you can download and install to cater to whatever your workflow is. It has different color themes, so you can color code your code to better read it, which is so helpful. I don't actually use VS Code for writing. I use it for reading and debugging. Like I said, the fact that you can color code everything makes it so easy to read code. You can do it with Vim, but the customization options aren't as great. Also really like about VS Code is that you can hook up a terminal to it. You can have an integrated terminal that's right below the program. And what that allows you to do is basically you can see your code up top, and then you have a terminal on the bottom, so you don't have to like pull up a terminal window like on the side or something like that, or like tab over to a terminal window. You can have it all right there in the text editor. So VS Code is like amazing for me for when I have to debug something and I have to read over it. It's awesome. Absolutely love it. An honorable mention, I guess, is Atom, the text editor. Atom's also open source. It's also a very, very great piece of software. And I actually used to use it. You could hook up a compiler to it. The reason I made the switch from Atom to VS Code is because I felt VS Code had more options and more plugins. And I felt that when I inevitably had questions, the community around VS Code was just a lot bigger. But no, Atom is still a great piece of software. Also, you can integrate a terminal into it, which is so good for your workflow. I highly recommend doing that. Now for virtualization software. As a programmer, I actually run a lot of VMs. Not as many as some ordinary gamers, but I run lots of VMs. Like I said, whenever I work on a Windows machine, I have to fire up an Ubuntu VM so that I can just code in there, because, like I said, programming on Windows is just not a fun time, and I have not found a way to make it, like, at least intuitive, so I'm just sticking with Linux for now. I use VirtualBox to fire up the virtual machines on Windows, and if I'm on Linux, I just use KVM. I don't run too many VMs if I'm on a Linux machine. There's no need to, really. So VirtualBox and KVM, both of them are great. I've tried out the Windows Hyper-V, the baked-in thing that comes with Windows. I didn't feel like it did anything that VirtualBox didn't do. I suppose one of the last things I should mention is my NAS software, because I know it's not really a programming tool, but I do store a lot of projects and a lot of source files on my server. So I run FreeNAS/TrueNAS. I think FreeNAS got turned into TrueNAS now. That's what I use. And it's great. It's open source. You can do whatever you want. It has lots of plugins. I'm a big customization freak. I tried out Ubuntu Server, but it seemed way too complex for what I was trying to do. Let me know if you'd like to see me tinker with Ubuntu Server, because there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with it. And if I had more time, I would try to like test it out more, but I just don't have the time these days. One of the things I left out is, I'm a C programmer, so inevitably I have to deal with like memory issues. The debuggers. I actually use 2 debuggers for helping fix code. I use GDB and Valgrind. Mostly GDB. GDB is great. It's in the terminal, kind of like Vim. You can just... what I really like is you can specify you want to work between this line of code and this line of code. So it's very good for localizing where you want to debug your program. It has so many options for seeing what's going on inside the program as it runs. I really, really do like it. So I mostly use GDB. I've used Valgrind a bit, but not too much. Mostly GDB. But yeah, those are the debuggers that I use, because everyone has to have a debugger when your code inevitably segfaults, right? So that's just an overview into the tools that I use when I'm programming. I was hopefully this was able to give you some ideas. If you're wondering, you know, what kind of programs you should use if you're also a programmer. If I left anything out that you think I should try, please leave a comment, because I'm always looking for new programs and tools to test out, because, you know, it's an ever expanding thing, you know. But yeah, I hopefully if you are looking to try something new, this will give you some ideas. Let me know. Leave a comment down below. Other than that, if you like the video, please leave a like and subscribe for future videos. And yeah, we'll see y'all next time.